Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the best corner of the worst community in the entire internet, that being the mixed martial arts community. Now, today we're going to be talking about UFC 289. I'm going to give you my picks for the main event and the co-main event. But first, I have to address the elephant in the room, which is that 289 is a little bit lackluster when it comes to names. And I specifically say names because all of the fights in this entire card are about to be bangers, okay? Everybody has amazing fighting styles, and they're going to clash in a very exciting way. And speaking from experience, cards that are exciting but don't have the names are much better than fights that have all the names in the world, but they're a bunch of really boring decisions in which not a lot of stuff happens. So first I'm going to talk about the main event. Irene Aldana, Amanda Nunes. Now, I'm just going to get this out the way. I have Amanda Nunes winning. I think that she's going to win. That being said, there is a clear path to victory here for Irene Aldana. Amanda, a lot of times, what she likes to do is she goes in there and she just kind of fights. She doesn't really say, this person is extremely good on the feet, so I'm going to take them down, or vice versa. She was not afraid of getting put in any kind of submission holds by Juliana Pena. She just kind of goes out there and does whatever she wants. She doesn't really customize her game plan to her opponent, and largely she hasn't really needed to. But she might need to against Irene Aldana, okay? If you guys haven't seen the Giannis Santos or the Caitlin Vera fight, you need to go back and watch those. It's a very good representation of what Irene Aldana looks like when she is actually on using her boxing and people aren't necessarily going for takedowns. She is absurd. There's been a lot of people saying that in WMMA, people don't really get knocked out. No one's ever told Irene that, so she's not aware of it. So she is just knocking chicks down left and right. And she's really honestly good at making reads. She's good at making adjustments. She's just really good at boxing, period. And Amanda has some interesting tendencies. Like, she doesn't really block punches. She kind of likes to either back up or just trade with you and be more powerful than you. And there's things that Irene straight up can exploit. Irene is more than capable of beating Amanda in a boxing match. In a kickboxing match, I'm not entirely sure. In an MMA match, she maybe is a little bit outclassed because Amanda can take her down at will. Irene has had problems getting taken down against Holly Holm and Macy Chiasson. Even though she eventually won that fight, she still had a lot of trouble stopping the takedowns. And I do think her takedown defense is pretty good. But against Amanda Nunes, I don't think it's going to really help her that much, if I'm being completely honest. Now, we have seen fighters just get really good randomly at takedown defense, like Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman in their third fight. But we can't really rely on that being the case necessarily. Basically, I could see a world where Irene goes out there and starts beating up Amanda Nunes on the feet, and she's actually having much more success than Amanda is having. And so Amanda decides to start shooting in rounds, late round 2, round 3, something like that. And by that point, she's already taken too much damage to really swing the tide of the momentum, and Irene is able to get a TKO or a decision. That's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. I don't think it's more likely than Amanda doing kind of whatever she wants. Amanda really likes to make statements. Like, she likes to, instead of finishing Juliana Pena, let it go 5 rounds so she shows everything that she can do, and she makes her highlight reel a little bit longer. She likes to knock out Holly Holm with a head kick. She likes to, submit Megan Anderson in the first round immediately. She likes to sort of send a message and show just how great she is. And so it's possible that she goes in there and just wants to strike with Irene to show how good she is, and it winds up biting her. All this being said, I got Amanda, but I can see a world where Irene wins. And so now on to the people's main event, the co-main event, Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. Now, my editor, CEO VPO, is the biggest Beneil Dariush fan in the world, and I know what you're thinking. He's the only Beneil Dariush fan in the world, but there's going to be some bias in the editing, and I'm just letting you know that's not me, okay? I hope that Charles Oliveira wins.
That's not gonna happen.
But I don't think that he does. Charles Oliveira's game plan, if it's going to be the same as it always is, what he's going to do is he's going to go out there and he's going to, throw crane kicks and, punches at range and just start kind of grabbing your head and, clinching with you and just make stuff happen so that you maybe make a mistake and he ends the fight. Okay, Kevin Lee gave up his neck for a millisecond, the fight was over. Justin Gaethje exited the clinch without protecting his chin, the fight was over. Dustin Poirier gave his back for a split second, and the fight was over. This is what he does. And Beneil doesn't really make those mistakes, okay? He is very, very, very responsible. He's an extremely good jiu-jitsu artist. He's extremely good. He is very durable. It's very hard to knock him out. Now, I will say that there is a path to victory for Charles Oliveira.
No, no, no.
And that is just finding the Charles Oliveira magic, and randomly, Beneil goes for a double leg and falls into a guillotine. He gets into Charles' guard, and, Charles catches him with some kind of submission.
Yo, it's everyone's favorite editor, CEO of EPO speaking. The very generous and handsome editor who is editing this video, obviously. And I'd like to chime in and say, the chances of this happening, it's basically the same chances as Alex Pereira landing a double leg takedown on Khamzat Chimaev.
We've seen Gaethje a lot of times get hurt, but not really fall down. And Charles was able to, knock him down flat with one punch because Charles isn't just powerful. He's fast, and he hits you in the perfect spot, and his timing is perfect. So he's able to knock these guys out. I think there's a very good possibility that Charles is able to knock Beneil out. I just also know that Beneil can knock Charles down with half of the punches that he throws. He throws extremely hard, and Charles a lot of times, I don't know if it's his chin or if his game plan is to fall to his back, but either way, this was the meme when Charles Oliveira was champion. You hurt him, he falls on his back, and somehow you lose. But we saw that wasn't the case when you're somebody like Islam Makhachev that can jump on Charles Oliveira, and your ground game is so good that you're not worried about getting submitted, and that is the case with Beneil Dariush. What also worries me for Charles is that Benny has fought somebody who has scary jiu-jitsu and scary hands and who's always coming at you, and that is Tony Ferguson. And what he did to Tony Ferguson was he took Tony Ferguson down, and he remained on top for 12 minutes and 15 seconds out of a 15-minute fight. And I think that his game plan may be similar. Now, I know what you're saying. He's going to be afraid to walk the streets at night if, on Charles Oliveira's return fight, he just lays on him for 15 minutes. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you do what you got to do. And Benny knows that better than anybody. It's fully possible that even if Beneil Dariush does not lay on Charles for the entirety of the fight, he still takes him down and remains on top for an entire round and wins that round, and then goes to a decision and wins the decision. I think that if this goes to a decision, it's very, very likely that Beneil is going to win, because Charles has always been the type of guy that loses some rounds or loses some minutes of some rounds in order to find a spectacular finish later. And if that spectacular finish never comes, he's going to lose the decision. I think that against Michael Chandler, the first round was a 10-8. I think that, he lost the first round against Dustin Poirier, and he was potentially losing the round to Gaethje until he got hit. Charles Oliveira, his fighting style doesn't really, it's not conducive to decisions, is what I'll say. There's a reason why fighters raise their hands after the fight, to show that they're confident that they won. There's a reason why their coaches always scream, yeah, hey, every time they throw a strike, even if it doesn't land clean, because it's all about optics to the judges. What are the judges seeing? Now, I know recently we've been like, what are they seeing? But that's a whole nother video. The point is that Charles Oliveira does not do that. He doesn't care if you think that he's losing the fight, because his finish is coming up pretty soon. But if he keeps looking for these finishes and these little cheeky guillotines and knockout punches and he never finds it, then he's just going to lose a decision. So, in conclusion, I think that Charles can win.
That's not going to happen.
He can win a TKO. He can win a submission. He can win a decision. But I think it's more likely that Benny gets a TKO or a KO against Charles, and I think it's more likely that Benny gets a decision versus Charles. I just think it's more likely that Benny wins. And we haven't even talked about the mental side of the game, where Charles is a pretty emotional person. He has moments where he's very stressed out. There's a lot of pressure on him, and it really, really affects him. And when he loses his belt, you have to wonder how much of that hunger is still there, and how much is he afraid of losing after having, a year-long layoff. So now it's time to get to you guys' comments on my TikTok that I made earlier this week. CEO VPO says, Beneil Dariush is going to win this, and then he'll beat Islam. The champ has a name, and it's Beneil Kobier Dariush. And to that I say, I hope you're wrong, but I kind of believe that you're right, that he's going to win this. As for beating Islam, I'm going to reserve judgment. If he runs right through Charles Oliveira, then there's a very good shot that he beats Islam. Next, we have Dremenzac7, who says, hell yeah, Oliveira versus Dariush winner gets snubbed from the title shot due to Poirier and Gaethje. I want to roast him for misspelling Poirier and Gaethje, but also, good God, they're difficult. And, I don't think that's the case. Maybe if Oliveira wins, he gets snubbed just because last fight with Islam was very one-sided, but Dariush is not going to get snubbed if he wins this. He straight up will not.
Is that a challenge?
And I think that Poirier and Gaethje is going to be next in line, whoever wins that. Mystic Soda Pop says, I don't know why, but I'm more interested in Ige versus Landwehr rather than Charles versus Dariush or Aldana versus Nunes. Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, this card has a lot of exciting fights. I don't care if it's, if it's a title eliminator. I don't care if it's, this person sells this many pay-per-views. Just, if it's a good fight, it's a good fight. It's fun. G says, what do you attribute the rise to the top recently for Mexican fighters? Marino, Grasso, Yair, and Aldana. This is a great question. And the answer is just marketing. Okay? When the UFC first started, there wasn't as many, Russians as there are now, but there were a lot of Americans and there was a lot of Brazilians. A lot of Brazilians because of jiu-jitsu, because of Royce Gracie, all of this kind of stuff. And then when the UFC started marketing a lot in Russia, all of a sudden a lot of Russians come in and they're all good. Okay? Russians, Americans, and Brazilians are not just built different than everybody else in the world. Maybe Russians, but you know what I mean. It's that it's not marketed that much to them. And this is also the reason why people say, oh, I don't think that WMMA is that good. Women just suck at fighting. No. It's the fact that there's not as much marketing towards women. And it's the fact that women's MMA has not been a thing until, 10 years ago, whereas men's MMA, at least in the UFC, is 30 years old. Khalid says Oliveira's 0-5 in Canada. It's true. Oh, no, I think he's 0-4, but I could be wrong. Fact check me.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's the CEO of EPO back at it again for a little editor's note. And guy, you are correct. He lost 4 times in Canada out of all 4 of his fights in Canada. He fought Pettis, Holloway, Miller, and Cub Swanson all in Canada, where he would get finished in all of those fights.
But, yeah, I don't think that matters at all, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Curses are actually, not real. Maybe if he was fighting in, Salt Lake City, it would be one thing, because it would be it's the elevation got to him, or, the jet lag. But, Canada, as far as the time zones, is not that different from pretty much all of the Americas. So I don't think it's, a time zone thing or an elevation thing. Maybe he's just cold.
Too hard, don't stand too close, you gon' fuck around and drown off this way.
Who knows? But with that being said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Go follow my TikTok and, comment on my TikToks. I might talk about you in my next YouTube video. See ya.
But I will tell you one thing. I'm not a beggar. I've done everything I need to do. You said fight in here. Whoever you put in front of me, I fought whoever. Here's what I will tell you. My crown will come from my Lord and Savior. I don't care if I have to win another 10 fights before I get this belt. I'll do it.